Their goal internally that they are confident that they hit is $100 million in annualized revenue within 12 months. So be it a $100 million run rate 12 months from now. Stargate revenue today. So I think we just saw the last month report. I think it's, call it $2 million for the month. I'm not perfectly quoting there, but $25 million annualized, maybe slightly less, maybe $20 million, and somewhere in the order of that.
Before we begin, I want to give a shout out to our new sponsor, SocialValue, an AI-powered investment research terminal with prop indices and a high-performing DEX on its own chain. Join its third research competition for a $100,000 prize pool by submitting on socialvalue.com or on bitclub.io, with an additional chance to win another $2,000 every 2 weeks. Here's another shout out to our sponsor, Quarterlist. Quarterlist is the investment relations hub for crypto, a single platform helping you find key information about liquid token projects, track updates, and connect with management teams. Leading teams like Maple, Plasma, and Polygon, as well as 50 funds have already signed up. Join the Crypto Investor Relations Hub today at quarterlist.com. All right, GM, we are live. Welcome to an episode of Bitcast. I'm your host, Jason Kam, aka at Maple Leaf Cap. Today is October 21st, 9 a.m. Hong Kong time. Bitcast is being live streamed to Bit Club members. Questions are from the members and my own. This is not financial advice. This will be a fun one. Today I'm speaking with Bryan, the co-founder and CEO of LayerZero. Bryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Should be a fun one.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. I think most people use your product every day, but can you just walk us through on a high level on the cross-chain volume and the market share today as you define it, that your LayerZero product?
Yeah, sure. So basically there's two types of volume. One being the dollars that are sent through the protocol. I think dollar volume today, we're probably, this month certainly like 90% plus, right? We've done $36.6 billion this month. So call it about $500 billion annualized at that rate. Obviously, the Plasma launch influenced it pretty heavily, but consistently over $10 billion a month lately, or like right around that mark. In terms of messaging volume, just pure number of messages sent, should be around 70%, somewhere within that range.
And this, all of this, I guess on dollars specifically, did you include the CCTP from Circle?
No, not including CCTPs from Circle. So this isn't like things that flow through the Stargate front end that aren't OFTs. This is just the LayerZero protocol. And so this number you can pull on LayerZeroScan.com, which sums up sort of all of our own. This isn't AORI volume right now. It's not CCTP front-end volume. It's not anything like that. And it's 36.848 billion in the last 30 days right now.
And just roughly, because I want to get some heuristics. A lot of people have their own numbers. And some people are questioning kind of, I just send message back 5 times, that's like a lot of message already. Like heuristically, if you include everything as we define it, including, like CCTP, including Chainlink, like include all of these things, where do you feel like you fall out in terms of both messaging and dollar sort of market share globally?
Yeah, so I mean, you can see, right, CCP volume, CCIP, so Chainlink is like near zero. They're like a couple $1 million a day, call them, $100 million a month or something. So, $100 million divided by $37 billion. CCTP, Circle has done, Circle has done $5.51 billion in the last month. So 5.51 versus, 36. So it looks like, if I'm pulling up the numbers right now, so it's actually been a pretty high month for everybody. So it's $2 billion for Wormhole, $5 billion for Circle, $1 billion for Chainlink, $36.8 billion for LayerZero. So, they sum them up to 8. So they're going to be, 8 out of 44. So yeah, call it 18%. So 82% or something for us, mental mathing.
Yeah, and your argument on messaging would be whatever double counting or whatever back and forth happens on you would also happen on your competitor. So it's kind of a wash.
Yeah, I mean there should be zero incentive to back and forth or sort of like to Sybil, right? We had our era of Sybil, in terms of messages per day. You're talking, 750,000 messages a day versus probably 35,000 messages a day on average now, 35 to 50,000. And so it's night and day difference from pre-TGE Sybil activity, sort of there being strong incentivization to do that versus now.
Yeah, and on the messaging, I think pre-TGE during the 23-24 period, it was like 300, 400, 500K messages a day. Now it's 40 to 50K, just about. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Here's another question. There are like 400, 500 plus native assets that support your omni-fungible token standard. There are like 100 plus thousand tokens out there. What's stopping everybody from using you?
Yeah, I mean, it's there are hundreds of thousands of there's actually 66,000 contracts deployed on LayerZero, so it's like far more than just the 500. But we really only define it as like real applications that we've known, that we've indexed, that have like we know the application, they're sending real messages. Like there's this threshold for what actually qualifies. So in terms of what actually qualifies is that. In terms of what's stopping everybody, it really is. I mean, if you look at the surface of large major assets, certainly stablecoins are a huge vector. A bunch of the major assets, almost all of them now are using it. Actually, the sort of state of the world, I think, is most encapsulated by the recent USDH vote via Hyperliquid and sort of this forum activity and contention. And actually, 100% of the proposals that went up from all of the teams all proposed using LayerZero. And this was not like a coordinated thing with us and them. Everybody was posting independently. People were pinging us saying, hey, we're going to, wrap this in. Let's, we want to use you guys. Let's do this together. And so like 100%. And so I think that shows like new things starting now. I feel like almost universally for most of the interesting things, certainly on the stablecoin side, fall in this direction. So I think I'm very happy with where we are in the state of the asset adoption, especially the size of assets. You'll see a few more come online in the next month or so that are big, legacy, meaningful assets that are adopting. So I'm actually very happy with the pace. And then things like USDT ZRO, things like PayPal, all these things have been great at accelerating this. Athena.
Sorry, and when you say like legacy top assets, we're talking about like top 25 assets moving on to the OFT standard.
Yeah, we're talking $5-10 billion large. Yeah, you mean meaningful assets.
Wow, congrats. Why is Circle doing their own thing?
Yeah, I think there was a back in time when Circle originally made this decision. We spent a lot of time with the Circle team. Great actual relationship with Circle over time. And have been a huge driver of USDC in the past through Stargate and everything. But so in the time, it was very contentious space. We probably only had 30-40% market share at the time they were making this decision. I think really it was wanting to be apolitical. I think what they have seen since I'm still of the belief that in a sufficient amount of time, Circle will sunset CCDP and USDC will be built on top of LayerZero. I very much believe that will happen someday in the future. Just because, I mean, they have a huge team who runs it. They have all of this infrastructure that needs to go in it. They run and support the protocol. And then you see things like USDT ZRO, has spun up. AUM on USDT ZRO has grown by almost like $10 billion. And you've had $35 billion of messaging volume growing across. It's doing more volume than USDC is. It's doing more, all of these things. And you have more and more sort of other assets starting to adopt this. And they don't need to have, the amount of infrastructure required, the amount of all of this stuff required. You're talking tens of millions of dollars annually in ongoing cost, probably on the Circle side. So I just believe every asset issuer who's serious will use this. It is the most battle-tested infrastructure by far, is the most widely adopted. It's been proven time and time and time again to be a really, really powerful network effect and going into markets and networks and what you can actually do with it.
I agree. This is why I have this running thesis that you're kind of the company's stocks in the shitter now, but Adobe set the standard of offering PDF for free, and they became the standard of document sharing globally, and they kind of start tacking on things on top. We'll get to that in a second. You mentioned, you're basically 70 plus, 80 plus % market share in both messaging and dollar transfer cross chain. How much revenue are you guys making off of that today?
Yeah, so there's two sides of the equation, right? So the revenue side for the protocol right now, fee switch isn't turned on. So historically, there's been $0 revenue in terms of the actual protocol. So you can sum up the revenue of the executors and the DVNs and all the partners who run infrastructure on top of it. That's one side. And then now, post acquisition of Stargate, obviously all of Stargate revenue is being driven directly to ZRO, right? And so I just actually Stargate team is fully in house now. It is one team, one effort. And I went through after the first month and I said, all right, let's lay out. What are we going to do over the next 12 months? What does this look like? Their goal internally that they are confident that they hit is $100 million in annualized revenue within 12 months. So be it a $100 million run rate 12 months from now. And so I think you should think about it on a scale of that size. That internally, that is sort of what the ambition is. That is the driving. We've switched more heavily before where it was, we're going to win the market and we're going to capture sort of as much as we possibly can and work with all of the best groups and do this to lay the groundwork, to now it's okay, we're here, we've done that side. Like you said, market share is great. What can we actually do on the revenue side? What does that look like? And again, with already post acquisition with Stargate Core, with Aori on top of it and having swaps, and then some of the newer stuff we're doing that's more AUM driven, team is pretty confident we get there in short order.
Yeah, I definitely want to touch on that because it's a very important part of the ZRO thesis. But before you acquire Stargate, I was under the impression that every cross-chain messaging or every cross-chain bridge of sorts, it cost around maybe 1 basis point or 40 to 50 cents, something around that ballpark. Is that roughly right?
Yeah, so there is I want to separate out LayerZero and Stargate, right? LayerZero side is a messaging protocol. We're totally agnostic as to what the underlying amount is being sent. So we don't care if you're sending NFTs back and forth, if you're an application transmitting state, which actually happens. And so as you think about, especially with lower latency, faster blockchains, things that have higher TPS, when you can have more just pure compute, more application power, the amount of state that moves back and forth matters a lot. And so it's state, it's finances, it's anything. So to us, it's all agnostic. It's all a packet. What is actively being priced is typically DVN. So who's verifying that attestation layer, who's doing the verification, charges a fee. There's 50 DVNs on top of LayerZero. They all charge a different amount. So that's one layer of it, is what does DVNs charge? The second is the executor. Now the executor charges, you're going Ethereum to Solana, you're being priced in real time. Here is the price of Sol in units of ETH. You pay everything upfront in ETH, and we take care of the Solana side of the transaction for you. You never have Sol on your wallet. You don't think about it. It's executed. It's done. We even drop you a little bit of Sol in your wallet, so now you can keep playing around. You can do transactions on the other side. So we're on we're running full nodes for about 150 chains. We're quoting n squared pathways across that mesh. So every pathway to every pathway, here is how gas assets are being priced. And we're marking up that gas of the destination gas by about 5%, right? So if you're paying, $1 in gas on one side, we're going to quote you $1.05. We're going to eat the vol risk. So if, it moves against us and we lose money and we pay $2 on the other side, we're fine with it, right? We've given you the quote's accepted, done. And so in real time, that's happening. So on average, I think you're talking probably about, maybe about 18 cents, somewhere in the order of that. But it depends on which piece of that you're talking about.
Got it. And so basically my understanding then is historically, if I think of pre-Stargate, all the revenue that's being generated, a bulk of it is actually being shared or given to the DVNs, right? Those guys that run the network. And then a part of it you kind of charge for yourself because you run the full nodes. But net, if I just run the math, it's like $5-10 million annualized on the current run rate, and maybe higher for 24, 25, 23 and 24, right? Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, during the time of airdrop and Sybil is substantially higher than that, but yeah, in the order of that right now. If what it's worth, I think, I think messaging is heavily subsidized right now. I think it gets tweeted about a ton. You have an $800 million transaction that paid a dollar. And you know what I mean? There is it is much cheaper probably than the market sort of bears, which has just been the model so far. The model is win.
Mm. Um, and that's fine because you're laying the groundwork for the network effect that you're about to kind of hopefully monetize on. But just a bit of housekeeping before we get to the thesis. I think you raised more than $400 million or something historically, if I'm not mistaken. Before the OTC deal you did, sort of what's the run rate expense of the business annualized, and how much do you have left in treasury?
Yeah. So again, pure labs, not not foundation, and foundation is just a separate thing. And also, it's important. Most of the sales, like the buybacks, all of these things have been pretty public that it's buying out sort of early investors. So we've more than prioritize balance sheet, more than prioritize anything. It has been purely move up cost basis, I'll say, right? So I think there's very meaningful chunks that have gone off of the market now to double digit percentages, which we think is great and sort of like under reflected in current market dynamics. But current run rates, labs this year, we will probably net burn go like $10 million roughly. That's not a number we talk about super widely. But we have 20 plus years of runway. We're like very comfortable.
Got it. And this is before the buyback.
Yep.
Okay. And you bought back how much already? $50 million worth, something like that.
In terms of how much ZRO has been bought back from
Yes.
markets.
Previously,
So
yeah.
I mean, A16Z has publicly had their $55 million number. That was very public. Obviously, with Stargate, this is another 5.8% of the total supply. It was roughly $120 at market price at that time. And then there's a bunch of groups who have actively been participating in that side more. So the number is a little bit higher than that. Again, it's well into double digit percentages now.
Sure. The amount that's acquired basically by the ZRO side. So like basically what I'm trying to get to is it seems like you have $200 million based on the 20-year runway that you have. Stargate is a good transaction. We'll talk about it in a second, but you basically paid very little in terms of cash because they have a huge treasury. It's a steal. And you bought back some tokens from unvested private investors. But even after all of that, you have like 15, 20-year runway still today based on the current burn rate. Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
We'll be around for a very long time.
Okay, that's great. Without revenue, which is a really good segue. You have built a business that is dominant in market share. It would seem like the most obvious path is to retain your market share while meaningfully increase the tick rate through various venues, whether it's through swaps, whether it's through vaults. Can you just walk me through kind of what most excites you in the next 6 to 12 months? You talked about Stargate, but like there are a couple of efforts that you're working on that could meaningfully catapult your revenue.
Yeah. I mean, I think Stargate acquisition was our public positioning to say we're doubling down. We are not taking this Stargate front end. We're not taking it. We're not saying, hey, us labs, we now are monetizing this away, etc. We're very public. When we acquire Stargate, every dollar through Stargate is driven to buying back ZRO. Every single dollar, right? So it's driving the revenue, or I define excess revenue was the actual wording that I used because there are some underlying expenses for running Stargate in terms of like gas costs for the all of these different things that like come into actually the protocol itself. But 100% of the revenue, if you talk $100 million run rate via Stargate and a bunch of different things that it's doing, that's going to be $100 million directly of buyback. And so that was our intention to say, hey, we're taking this back in internally. We're going to have a much closer relationship with the end customer, and we're going to start to build more customer-focused products. Where LayerZero itself is very B2B, right? It's very much developer tooling. People build on top of us. We do our very best to help support and help them augment and grow their businesses, help them build something that's like a net useful to their underlying asset or application or whatever it may be. Where Stargate is very much like we're going to provide world-class service or product experience to the end consumer. And we're going to monetize that as you would monetize any product.
What's the
And
Stargate
that
revenue today?
monetization again goes to zero. Stargate
Yeah.
revenue today. So I think we just saw the last month report. I think it's call it $2 million for the month. I am not perfectly quoting there, but $25 million annualized, maybe slightly less, maybe $20 million, and somewhere in the order of that.
Yeah. I think a lot of the wallets right now are not, they're not providing a service that is like a one-click swap function. And it would seem like for your product to bridge from 25 today to 100, it would seem like the wallets need to prioritize you. It would also seem like you need to basically have yourself be favored by aggregators. So why don't you walk me through how you, in your mind, bridge from 25 to 100 next year?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of different approaches. So we think there's three main paths. One is core Stargate now, the bridging. So call that same asset to same asset, right? So that's the Stargate pools that exist right now. Um, and then so that's one, same asset, same asset. Two was with fast swaps, is cross asset stuff. Now, with same asset to same asset floats from zero point 0.5 bips to 6 bips, call it, somewhere depending on the pathway, somewhere in that order. Cross asset stuff floats from 4 bips to 25 bips basically in the market. Depends on the pathway and how long tail it is and who you're using. Actually, some of the really long tail stuff of stuff we're not covering right now that are covered by others can be like 80 bips, right? It can be really crazy. But spreads are much, much wider on those assets. And we think we have, can offer much more competitive pricing, like best pricing, consistent across all of these pathways, leverage the underlying Stargate pools to make rebalancing more efficient, do all of these things that creates just a really strong flywheel, so liquidity overall. And then the third side that has not been explored very widely is AUM-driven businesses. And we think we have the potential with some of the other stuff we're doing, with some of the Hydra stuff, to really drive an AUM driven side of the business that we think we can capture meaningful number of basis points on. So we think of those as the three main things: cross asset, same asset, and then AUM driven things. And we think we're in a really strong position to drive value both to the end users and then across the ecosystems themselves.
Yeah, and the same asset cross asset is the bips range that you mentioned. Is that competitive, versus? Because it would seem like the wallets either pick the path themselves, or the aggregators sort of do their thing and kind of pick. Like, do you feel like you always come
Yep.
on top after? Yeah.
Yeah, so most of the time, yes. Not all of the time. Certainly on same asset, very, very, very often for all of the routes that Stargate is primary on should be near to the top, especially for longer tail chains. It's just hard for people to service most things. So same asset, absolutely. Cross assets, a new muscle. I think we're very competitive. We should be best quote, call it 60% of the time, and the goal is to be best quote almost 100% of the time, right? So we are competitive in quoting. We are not always the best quote, but it is working our way to be there, for sure. And then was a third part of that question? There's one other question you asked there.
No, I'm also wondering because for you to come on top, there's the cost problem, and
Oh
then
yeah, on the
there's the
aggregate. Sorry,
latency.
the other
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. The other thing. So the other thing I wanted to bring up is Stargate, the front end itself, is doing even pre-Plasma. Was doing multiple billions of like something like I think in the month that we did 10 billion, there was like 6 billion of it went through the Stargate front end. Like the front end itself is in. You would think, and people say this all the time. Oh, everybody is everybody's just going to use an aggregator. Everybody's going to use this. Everybody's going to use this. But if you actually look at the data, I think over that period, and certainly probably this month as well, and Angus can pull the exact data, I think the Stargate front end has done more than like all of the ags combined, basically. It really was like when I looked at it last, the delta was very extreme. I can grab the exact data. Angus will have it. But the front end really commands like a lot of the percentage of the overall volume that happens on the LayerZero protocol. So there isn't actually as much via ag and via others as you would think.
Interesting. And your hope is then through all these higher profile launches, they would remain picking LayerZero Stargate as like I guess they'll pick LayerZero standard, and the way for people to bridge onto it, the most natural would be through Stargate because it is the lowest latency, lowest cost path because they pick you as default. And hopefully as massive volume churn through your website, you'll get a retention later on, and they'll remind them of Stargate. Is that roughly the thinking of
Yeah, so
go-to-market?
I think there's two things, right? So one is you just have to think there's asset issuance is a primary thing. So if you're launching a new network, and we can just take Plasma as an example, right? Plasma is launching a new network, and you need to get assets into there. So if you have other intense protocols or other messaging protocols or anything, like they can't do anything. There's nothing that exists there. There's no inventory for them to have. So you have to actually get assets into the ecosystem, mint them, burn USDT zero here and mint it there, lock up something on Ethereum and mint it over there, right? Like the canonical pathway to getting in. And Plasma really set the stage, and they said, listen, we're not going to own the front end. Everything is going to run through Stargate. So they said, their canonical front end for getting into the Plasma ecosystem was Stargate, which meant all of the volume that flowed into Plasma, out of Plasma, everything around the ecosystem flowed through that. And so that sort of, I think, has set a standard for a bunch of other groups of, hey, and actually now it went from Stargate is now like a compelling, like people want to be listed in Stargate. They want to be there. It's driving much more volume than I think most people actually think on the front end itself. And so the goal is, yes, we want to be canonical. We want to be the way that ecosystem use this as a front end. And we'll build you a front end as a service. If you want it to be themed, if you want to be your own thing, we'll white label it. You can host it. You can have your own front end. It just runs on the same rails, gives you all the assets, all the experience, everything. But at the end of the day, most people are going to the UI, and we are going to be able to offer them right now. Everybody that thinks about Stargate is bridging. Move USDC here to USDC here, USDT here to USDT there. We want them to start to think about it more as cross-asset, as other opportunities. Again, like we think there's a lot that we can offer by just building an amazing consumer experience such that if you want to move around the ecosystems, if you want to be in a lot of places, if you're going to be looking for the best yield opportunities, we're going to be doing all of this stuff. There's so much that we can do to just make it easy for the end consumer and abstract away all of the pain of thinking about bridging, of thinking about any of this stuff, and just like dead simple. And that's always been kind of the thing we really focus on, is just how do we make this as dead simple as possible for consumers?
There are a couple of high profile launches that are coming. Some of them are potentially layer ones and layer twos. Are they all LayerZero customers, or?
I think the large majority of new launches moving forward, I think you might have a noticeable exception of two about maybe an asset is with somebody else, or one small thing. The large majority, I think, by and away, will be LayerZero focused. I think we now are the way that the large amount of assets, if you look at any of the most meaningful launches over the last year, they're almost all driven via LayerZero. If you look at ecosystems that were extremely competitive in the past of how assets get there, things like Aptos, et cetera, like almost all of the assets in Aptos were via LayerZero, right? That didn't start that way, right? That started with a bunch of different people trying to bring in assets. There's one asset, one out. We're pretty confident that you will see LayerZero front and center at many of these upcoming launches.
Got it. So my impression then, it feels like the aggregator part will be not the priority, right? Like people bridging in the old ways, they want to do it through Bungie, through Li-Fi, through whatever they're more used to. And if those paths don't prioritize you, that's fine, because you want to own the relationship with consumers directly. And that's how you're going to drive that bridge towards 100 million. Is that roughly the summary? And
again, I think our goal is to be like, people are going to use ags, right? There are plenty of people who use ags. But a lot of ags, they do only certain things or only certain routes, and they're not everywhere. They're not all assets. So there's like a mixture of a bunch of things. We still want to be the best quote. Like we want to be competitive. We want to drive amazing value to the end consumer. We think when we think a lot about building, we think about like what are the unfair advantages that we have. And I think one of the unfair advantages that we have is the natural liquidity that Stargate provides. Even if you look at, back when I was on Twitter fighting with Across every day, right? Like even Across, a bunch of their volume just gets rebalanced through Stargate, right? Because like they have inventory issues and there is no way to get size and inventory back. And if you want to rebalance it between L2s, you want to do any of this thing, well, you have a 7-day waiting period. And so there's all this stuff where like, at the end of the day, Stargate is the liquidity sort of hub for all of this, is the center that allows this stuff to function. You can build a bunch of different layers and abstraction on top of that. But guess what? Now in-house, now as the same product, we can offer something that other people just can't, right? And maybe it's that we can quote way better because, maybe you make it that all of the solving stuff gets free or discounted rebalancing across Stargate. There's a bunch of things that we could do that just is a structural advantage over other parties that they can't do. And so our goal is to not only be the most competitive, but also offer the widest. So I think it should be both. Like, we want to win and be at the top of every ag every time. And then we also want to build a really rich consumer experience where like they don't need to go anywhere else.
If it's on the ag side, could you beat Relay? What do you think of them?
And let's check, pull it up. No, Relay. I mean, listen, Relay is great. I think we spent a bunch of time with the team. I think what they've done on the retail side is super impressive. But they're just like, they have a totally different risk model, right? Ultimately, it's just like, we are just going to just have your quote and just like, you know what I mean? Their risk model is just completely different in terms of how they approach it. But I think in terms of execution, they've just done an incredible job.
I see.
Yeah.
So tell me about Irori, and are you planning other apps in the pipeline to further this growth of owning the relationship with the consumer?
Yes, definitely. So again, our goal is 3 sort of streams of ways that people interact right now. And I think the first goal is really hammer it down. Again, Aori is a great start. We want more chains. You want to be able to have more venues for being able to offer more competitive prices. There's all of this stuff we can go from being like the best quote 60% of the time to being the best quote 95% of the time, right? Like, how do we in the next month like make that gap happen? Which I think is great, and they've been awesome, and I think they're just continuously refining and like making that better. And then I think it's one, what do you do with that? So once you have the best pricing, once you're just the most competitive sort of across the board, which will happen, where do you get it? How do you get the most distribution? How do you pull in the most users? What can you do? And so I think there's a two-sided bit of that, but yeah, definitely. Stargate is going to be the hub, and we're going to create a really rich consumer experience, which is going to be many things.
Got it. So it really sounds like it's going to be the app will be Stargate, right? And then
Yes.
it doesn't seem like there's like a wallet that it doesn't seem like there's like a mobile app. It's like Stargate PCN first and foremost, and maybe integration with Phantom and whatnot down. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Understood. Tell me about the third path, which is the vault thing you talked about. What is that?
Yeah. So some of it. I guess some of it we're not talking about yet. So I'm going to speak a little bit opaquely, but I think Stargate has done a really amazing job at bringing substantial liquidity into a bunch of ecosystems. I think there is strong demand from the ecosystems and from the users to be able to offer something that, again, is more AUM driven as a relationship. So the historic relationship has been, listen, Stargate is going to go and you're going to get... Stargate is going to go and you're going to get kind of in a Hydra relationship. You're going to get all these assets that flow in. You won't have to think about bridging. You won't have to think any of this stuff. And Stargate has the underlying that sits within the protocol, which is great because Stargate now doesn't need to incentivize a protocol. It's been like a great super symbiotic relationship, but there's so much more that you can do for the ecosystem. There's so much more that you can do across the board for what Stargate has the ability to offer and how easy you can make it for people. So I think we'll become sort of more and more clear over time. But yeah, we think there's just a lot to do there. And having spoken to people, we're yeah.
Let's then speak in hypothetical, right? Because from the conversation with you just now, it would seem like it used to be people just burst through acts, and maybe sometimes they are reminded of Stargate or something. And then through one protocol after another of launches, it would seem like people will have an impression to bridge through Stargate. And once they come back and again to bridge, they will now start noticing, actually, I could do the fucking swap there. And why wouldn't I do that? Because the fees there are really good after I compare prices, and then it becomes the default. But once you have the bridge and the swap, it would seem like you could have a TVL relationship with them. And we could even further believe that, for example, if Plasma were to come to you today, instead of people going to Plasma's website for the TVL relationship, for yield farming, for earning or whatever, the Plasma could be redirecting those users to your website, which is Plasma branded potentially. And you would now hold the TVL, and it's the most natural way to do so because people are already bridging and swapping onto Plasma. And because of that, the tick rate that would come from the interest potentially from all these vaults and all these TVLs could also belong partially to LayerZero.
Yep. And I mean, just in general, right? This all starts from you have to build a relationship of trust with the end consumer. You have to be able to offer them. Like you said, people are going to go, they're going to check quotes. And until you're the best quote, every time they check and they say, I don't need to go check anywhere else anymore. I'm like comfortable. I'm right. I'm confident that I'm getting the best price and I have everything here, etc. And then everything builds on top of that. So I think that is like mission number one. Get there, do that. I think we're very confident we can do that. Where you go from there, again, I think there is just a super open space. And we've spent the time with people like we know the value is there. We know the intent is there. That we're very confident that once we have that, people are very happy with what they're getting on the other side to build that relationship.
How soon should we start seeing the vault contributing?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think what everybody should hold the team to, what everybody, I'm publicly, this is not a proclamation they've made publicly, but I'm making it here.
Yeah, I know.
Is I've asked them, and it's $100 million annualized within 12 months. So every month you should see progress, material progress being made towards that goal, right? So there's almost $2 million this month. It should be considerably more every single month moving forward.
If I were to break down the 100 million, how much do you think would come from the bridging and the swapping side versus this new initiative that you talked about, that you kind of alluded to?
Yeah.
You don't have to answer.
I know I'm being a little bit cagey here. It's fine to ask the question.
Fine.
The reason I'm being a little bit cagey is I actually, one of the quotes I love the most, you probably saw me tweet about it at some point, or some people have, about sitting on my vacation and reading 500 plus pages of Jeff Bezos, of every word that Bezos has ever written. And one of the things he says is the best thing that ever happened to them is the fact that they didn't talk about in market one time ever AWS for the first 5 to 7 years. And they just had no competitors for a very long time. This space is much more transparent. There's much less opacity, but he says it was the best thing that could have ever happened. So I don't really want to give an exact breakdown of what revenue looks like and where it's coming from, etc., because I think we can just outcompete people here. And I want the time to be able to build a really amazing product and have that head start and deliver it. So I think what people should look at, what people should judge, is what is the revenue overall. And I'll leave the revenue composition a little bit amorphous mentally for you right now. But it's really that. It's can the team get it to $100 million annualized within 12 months? And what does that look like? And maybe it's that there's some, maybe it's that swaps takes off so much that just now becomes a dominating factor anyways, right? There's probably some path independence there, but yeah.
Sorry for being mid-curve. The last
totally
bit
fine.
The last bit on this topic, if you were to exceed expectation, right, in 12 months time, if you were blowing past it, what would be that optionality coming from, if you were to name one or two things?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a couple of things that if they go very well, individually, ideally each one, when you look at product lines of what you tackle, right? Where do you spend your time and what does it actually do? Some things, right? You can think about core bridging right now, almost on Stargate side of the pools, almost like loss leading, right? Very cheaply priced in general, overall, maintaining hundreds of millions of dollars of TVL across the ecosystem, doing all of these things. And so again, sort of unfair advantages do some of these things give you? What does that structurally look like? I think there's a couple of things that we can do and do very well that each independently have their own path to like $100 million each, right? And so I think any product that you look at, you really don't want to be doing things like if the upside for your product is like $5 million a year, $10 million a year, it's like not worth spending time on, right? Like we really want products that can be many hundreds of millions of dollars a year. And I think we talk to even some larger like crypto adjacent companies who are just touching crypto in some way, and they're making like hundreds of millions of dollars annually in revenue, right? MetaMask famously was quoted for a long time, like $200 million plus per year in swaps and growing. And that was like a year or two ago, right? Like, this consumer relationship can be very, very meaningful. There's a huge market there. There's a bunch of different ways that people have value overall. But the number one thing is like you have to be able to deliver an amazing product. I think that's where we start. And I think optimize on the revenue from there.
Fair enough. Moving on to stablecoins, I think it's unlikely they will ever do this because literally Plasma just work with you. But can you, for those who may be concerned, can you just walk us through your relationship with Tether, and do you ever foresee a day of them building something of their own?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the offering to most groups is pretty straightforward, right? The offering is this: you can go and you can put together a 100-person team that you're to build, that you sell, that you maintain. You can run DevOps. You can have this cost center of tens of millions of dollars per year to build your own CCTP, or with the same exact security properties that they have right now, you can build on top of LayerZero on battle-tested infrastructure that has been used for hundreds of billions of dollars, and you can do it with only the attestation piece. That's it. Right? So cut off everything else. You get that full end-to-end everything, let alone the network itself, let alone 150 plus chains, let alone everything that comes with it. CCTP, still on the other side, you have to claim your transaction, right? You still have to go and pay and claim the transaction on the other side, which is like a nightmare. There's only a very small subset of chains early on. If you want to make it fast, you're paying extra bips on top. There's all of these things that come into it. And you look at a product like USDT Zero, you look at the way that WBTC or Ondo or PayPal or Athena or any of these groups are building, and they effectively, right? A bunch of these groups run their own attestation servers, same exact way that Circle does for CTTP. So same exact setup, like Circle could migrate to LayerZero today and have identical security properties to what they have on that. Keep their attestation server, keep the thing that signs all the message and says this is valid. Right? Keep all that exact same security property. It would take them like a day. We could do it in 24 hours. They can fire all their people, save all the money on that side, now have it all automatically execute on the other side, have it on all of the chains that they wanted on, all of these things. It would be like dead. It's so easy to do. So they're offering to most groups is that, like, listen, this gives you the ability to have the control, to have the underlying infrastructure, and to make it just dead simple. And so with all of these groups, the relationship is largely everybody wants. Stablecoins in general are an AUM-driven business, right? They're an AUM-driven business. Everybody wants to have the most dollars that are in the underlying contracts because that's how they make money. That's the business model itself. And they want to have the most utility on the other side. So this is, things like Plasma, et cetera. Like, great, you're having free stablecoin transfers, you're having a credit card on the other side, you're having some way to push real world adoption. So you want like velocity and you want AUM. And I think for us, it's very clear that we solved the AUM piece, right? We solved the ability to get into markets. We solved the ability to grow meaningfully. You see things like with USDT Zero, right? It started with this native mesh of existing USDT, and then it was USDT Zero on some chains, and then it was actually, hey, we're going to take Arbitrum and we're going to migrate the existing USDT contracts to USDT Zero, and we're going to migrate these other contracts to USDT Zero. We're upgrading these things, and now if you look at the volume and the AUM and how much velocity is moving through them, I think it's just been proving the business model like really, really amazingly well, and everybody wants that. Everybody sees the growth. Everybody sees a driver. And again, it is so simple to do. So, someday, at some point in time, when Circle says, you know what, we're migrating, it will be very easy for them to do.
Yeah, Jeremy, if you're watching, give Bryan a call. And Circle is not part of that 100 million projection yet.
Circle is not part of that, no.
Okay, makes sense. I'm guessing because like we also hear about things like Tempo, and I'm guessing a bunch of other corporate chains, if you may.
Yep.
It would seem like they also should be picking you because of the flexibility you offer them.
So Tempo has already announced that their interoperability partner is LayerZero.
Yep. Great.
So that's already public. It was in their initial comms. We did the PR release with them and everything. So yeah, we will absolutely be there. We'll be supporting Tempo from day one. You can expect lots of flows in both directions.
Yeah. I guess here's the good segue to kind of wrapping up this part on the stablecoin side, because this is at least I feel like where most of the growth is gonna just one directionally come from. If you tag all of these like you should just grow with them. In terms of switching cost, I guess, is there a way you quantify, or when you try to, assuage your customers and pursuing them to not move to, accelerators and trying to convince them to switch over? Like, what do you basically tell them in terms of switching costs?
It's almost never happened if you look at meaningful assets within the ecosystem. Really, we track our churn. It is near zero. We've seen a lot in the other direction. In general, we took such an orthogonal approach. When we started building, this was in a time when Avalanche Rush was happening. People were like, I'm going to pay you $10 million to build on top of us. It was just like this crazy environment. And we told almost everybody, like, listen, we're not going to pay you anything. We're not giving you any grants. We're not doing anything. I don't want a logo X logo, PR announcement. I want to build something that is going to meaningfully make your asset or application better. And we will spend the time and effort and actually ship that with you. And so if you look at some of our closest partners, with USDT, we built out the native mesh, right? That is like ties in TON and Tron and Ethereum and all these legacy assets that existed. We made that flow just easier and useful and had the ability to go out on the USDT zero side. If you look at Athena, right, deeply involved in the TON implementation of Athena and getting them over there and the relationship there and building out a bunch of the sort of technical scoping. If you look at sync pools, which EtherFi does, which made it so that it's easy for them to natively stake from a layer 2 and immediately get your ETH issued and start accruing yield and start to do all of these things, right? Like we went and we built that out with them. Like we work very, very closely with our close partners. And we've never had a single one of them move. So they have all, I promise you, been courted time and time and time again, have been offered money and showered all of these things. These people are building, they're building very serious businesses, very meaningful businesses who generate, tons of cash. In the delta of being paid $1, $2, $3, $5 million, whatever the number is, just doesn't move it. People want to be on technology that has been battle tested, that they can trust, that scales. And then you have the network effect as well, right? In terms of, it is the same thing. When you talk about the OFT, you started like, of the volume that moves, so much of it. Strip out CCTP, and it's like 3 billion for the entire rest of the industry versus like 36 billion, right? It's like night and day delta. You're talking 1/13 of the overall. And so when you are built as an OFT, guess what? All of the ags who integrate OFTs, you get immediately. All of the front ends who integrate OFTs, you get immediately. Every exchange now is comfortable. Every exchange has OFTs listed. Many of the exchanges are using OFTs on the back end to rebalance inventory. All of the market makers are comfortable with OFTs and moving them around and taking advantage of opportunities. Like all of this stuff is just downstream effects that really, really compounds from an asset side, right? And like, are you going to pick a standard that is like, not used widely in production, doesn't have this adoption, and you're going to start to fight uphill to say, please adopt this technology, please adopt this standard. It's just harder. So not only do we have this great relationship, we spend a ton of time with them, and I think we're just try to be the best partners that we possibly can. But I think there's a bunch of embedded network effects on top of the like trust that we built. I think we've earned the trust of most groups, but then you also do have the network effects of the actual integrations and what it looks like and getting used across locations.
Yeah, and you don't really charge them. To be quite honest, there's no upfront integration, so they have to do work to switch, and there's like almost no reason to. Okay, I guess I think this is a pretty interesting. If you can deliver a really exciting kind of tick rate story. And the metric to track by is basically tick rate on both economic value transferred as well as messages being transacted, right? As you execute on this journey of lifting the fee through swaps and vaults, and let's say you hit your target by this time next year, is there like one or two big things that is you think is like a huge green space that you haven't even tackled yet that propels the next phase of growth for you?
Yes.
If you can talk about it.
I cannot talk about it, but we will talk about it sometime in the future. So, we've always talked about internally our attitude. You want to know how we think about the world. The landscape of what exists right now, like 90% market share, great. If the world is what it is right now, it is not worth this being the thing that we've like dedicated our lives to, right? We have much, much broader ambitions as whole. I think people are going to be shocked in the next 12 months from now at how much progress we've made, both in the institutional side of things and the TradFi side. As stablecoins accelerate, right? There's this path where I think it's projected over the next couple of years to hit, $3 trillion from $300 billion. Now I think we're going to capture the large majority of that. We have a lot that we've built, a lot of time that we've spent internally, and I think we're really have just been crushing execution. I couldn't be more like happy with the rate that things are progressing.
Okay, so I won't ask about the TradFi and RWA and tokenized shares and kind of NASDAQ side of things. We'll leave that to a conversation.
The stuff that has been publicly announced is, obviously all of Ondo's, all of Ondo's global markets are OFTs. They're all built on top of LayerZero. All of Denari's stuff, same thing. There's very excited to talk about more in the future. Okay.
This is probably why XSNC did the buyback or did the purchase that they did. Maybe you can tell us more about, there's a bit of history with FTX and all the investors doing a deal that is at a pretty high valuation. And this is a conversation that only you can have with them, right? It's kind of, when you have the conversations with investors and they hold the bag that is, what they have, what's the sentiment like, and what's the discussion with them like when you talk to them about buybacks and don't sell the token, the vesting and all that? If you can tell us more about it.
Yeah, I think ultimately the general stance of investors, like if you just look at vesting, very, very little is actually being sold in the market. Obviously, a lot has been bought back, so naturally that's part of it. But very, very little is being sold. I think if you look at our core investors, extremely bullish. I think there's a bunch of, again, A16Z publicly, us publicly through Stargate side of things, post Stargate, all of these things have been public. I think there's just been a ton more consolidation that hasn't been seen. We get zero, and I know it's probably so we get zero pressures from our investors, like zero. I think if you ask most of the funds who invested in us early, they're just like, you guys have done an unbelievable job executing, super happy overall. All of our largest investors, largest stakeholders, I think they see and they work with the team. They know how we are. I think people have just like made the bet. We deeply believe in the other end of the vision here, and I think they're really bought in. So it is not the case of, oh my God, what's happening? You guys have got to do this. You've got to do this. Drive this thing. Like try to make this. They never come to us with that stuff, which has been great. And I was pretty upfront with them when we were raising in general, and I was listen. We know exactly what we're building and how we're going to build it. I don't want advice on like that side of things. We know what we're doing. Here's the vision that we have. What I don't know is how to build a world-class company. And we were just totally upfront with them when we were raising. And like, that's what we wanted from them, especially in the rounds with A16Z and Sequoia co-leading and like that phase of things. And that's really what we have, early on, what we lent on them the most is how do we build this into not just a couple of people who have built a great product, but like a really amazing organization that's functioning at just like an extremely high capacity. And I think that's where we're at right now.
That's helpful. As we think about the path towards hitting our target and then moving beyond it with, more white space that you kind of can allude to maybe in the future, With the economic value generated through the cash flow, how do you think about the accrual to either the token or if there is equity?
Yep. Yeah. So I think there's labs. Labs is its own thing. Labs does work for the protocol that should augment and increase the underlying. So think about it as consensus to Ethereum kind of relationship. Labs has to live and die on its own. The protocol should not care about labs. We've been very, there is this constant battle that you see, I think, in other protocols and many other times when the front end, the owned front end in the protocol have really divergent interests. And it's as labs and protocol divergent interests. We're going to be very clear that it's not going to happen. So like when we did the Stargate acquisition, we're just totally, we were like, listen, every dollar that goes through this goes to buying back ZRO. Everything is driven to protocol. Everything is driven to protocol value. And that is not just Stargate itself. That's everything that we're building around, all these other things that we're talking about. They're embedded in Stargate, all of that. So labs is not capturing any of that. That's not focused on labs. That is all driven to the protocol. And so labs its own model. Labs runs an executor. Anybody can run an executor. We run, it's incredibly hard to do. That is our model as labs. As part of it is that execution layer. And we more and more services that we build on and around the protocol itself. But labs has to live and die on its own. The core, right, our focus is always going to be protocol before labs. It's always going to be token before equity, just always. And that doesn't mean labs isn't productive and sustaining and doing all those things. But like with the Stargate acquisition, we're going to make it abundantly clear that that is where people should look, and there's not going to be this conflicting, set of interests.
I have to ask this because it's a topic. Well, it's dying now, but what do you think about the ATs?
Yeah, that's, I think, listen, we gotta ask, like, every major issuer of DATs reached out to us. So many VCs, everybody have just considering this. We might do one. Do you want us to do it? What does this look like? What does this look like? There's two things I told them. One, we're not sellers of the token right now. So like, listen, there is no foundation labs, like we're not selling the token. So there's no like acquire the token at a discount and put in the vehicle. We're actually net buyers of the token. So we're like extremely optimistic about what we're doing, extremely optimistic. So there's like, that was one precluding. And the other thing is, I think the DAT itself as a vehicle is interesting because I think what you give is an easy way to have public markets to have access to the underlying. And I think there's value in that. I actually think there's like meaningful value in like, I have aunts or uncles or, people that we know who just like, they're just not going to sign up for a Coinbase account or a Binance. They're just not going to. It's just like hard. It's tricky. It's messy. Like if they could just do it in an easy way, in a retirement account or in whatever, they would just do it, right? So giving public markets an easy way to have a relationship with the underlying protocol is inherently valuable. I strongly agree with that. So the two questions are, one, are DATs the best way to actually do that? So that's like the first. And then the second is when do you do that? When do you want to establish that relationship? What does it look like? Is it really from the labs entity, sort of from the protocol? Is it one thing and one place to look? Or is it 20 different things and everybody launches their own and the public figures out, well, this is like the Ethereum Solana direction right now. There's not a single place to look if you're in the public markets, right? There are many places, lots of different treasury strategies are being run around each of these. The question is just, what are those? So when I think through overall the problem, I think through that. Do I think there's value in the DAT? Do I think there's value in the relationship with public markets? Absolutely, yes, I do. Do I think I want to, put in a bunch of discounted tokens to do like, no, we're that is not the approach that we're taking in general. Because we're not net sellers of the token, or sellers at all of the token right now. So that just straight precludes that.
So if some Chad wants to just spin up a public co and market buy, you would support, but you won't do anything with them for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Bryan, this is great. Before we go, is there anything else we haven't covered that you feel like you want to have a word or two about?
I mean, it's weird. I'm not used to needing to be this cagey on, I guess we're less is a different conversation that I'm having many times.
Yes.
So I feel like I had to avoid. I think again, I'm very happy to revisit this in 6 months and 12 months and be like, oh, here's all the stuff I was talking about. Look
Yeah,
how
yeah, yeah.
amazing this is.
We'll have you on.
But no, this has been great. I think ultimately, we care a lot. I mean, we're competitive people by nature. I think we care about winning. We're very focused on like winning the market. But I think the most important thing I've probably said here is that like the market as it exists today is not enough. There are many, many things that we could do. I think we've assembled an unbelievable team and core company. The reason why we are obsessively focused on this thing that we're doing is we think there is, so the opportunity is so much greater than sort of what is being represented right now. We've sort of like created this market even as it is now. There's a lot more, and again, I think that will be pretty visible near term.
Awesome. And for anybody interested, reach out to Daryl Lau for the IR related stuff.
Definitely.
Bryan, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.